Welcome to Penny Press.
Hello everyone. I just got on here to do this short video, and it was a story that I had found and I wanted to share with you. I've been working on a few other stories, but this one in particular was just kind of short and I just wanted to share it. It was actually in a Binghamton, New York Sunday Press newspaper dated March the 22nd, 1953. But it was about some Ironton history, and I thought it was pretty interesting and that you guys might enjoy it. The article or the story was wrote by Fred Dickinson, and he wrote it in 1953, but it wasn't about 1953 at all. So listen to the story. I think you'll like it. One by one, the lights in the residential section of Ironton, Ohio, winked out, and the ghostly fog rolled in from the Ohio River. Clocks raised their hands towards midnight, the ominous hour so long dreaded by at least one of the Shannon sisters. Miss Elizabeth Shannon, the older sister, watched the advancing hour worriedly as she waited in the Walnut Street home for Helen Shannon. Soon she hoped the attractive Helen would walk in, as she had so many times before, with a bright smile and good-natured nonchalance. Helen worked in the office of a manufacturing plant in Ashland, Kentucky, on the opposite bank of the river. She was popular there with many admirers, but neither sister ever had married, being content to live together in their comfortable home. Each day, Helen walked several blocks from home to take a bus to Ashland, returning the same way and at a different hour. On this evening of October the 1st, 1935, she had remained long after the office closed on regular business to do some special typing. She took the bus back to Ironton, alighted the few blocks from home, and walked into the fog to her death. It was a night watchman, Ben Atkinson, who saw the first act of the macabre drama. He was walking near his station when he saw two figures moving near a house across the street. They were indistinct through the white curtain, but a man seemed to be holding a woman, and they moved in a soundless but spasmodic fashion. Once she fell to the ground, and he dragged her to her feet. "What's going on over there?" Atkinson asked. The man half turned. "She's had too much to drink," he said thickly. "Better call the police." Concerned, Atkinson went to the plant telephone and put in a call. But the couple had disappeared when a cruiser arrived. For 15 minutes they searched the area, and then they found the body of the woman in a ditch. It was Helen Shannon. She had been dead only a few minutes as the result of severe blows and strangulation. The killer had fingers of steel, Dr. W. Wilson Lynn, Lawrence County coroner, said when he examined her. There's no odor of liquor at all, so that was simply the ruse of a murderer who was almost caught red-handed. Helen Shannon's purse, still containing change, was found nearby, and there seemed little reason to believe that the murder was the result of a robbery attempt. Either she had been slain as the climax of a lover's quarrel, or had been senselessly struck down by a midnight marauder who preyed upon any helpless woman he might find. While the neighborhood shivered in sudden terror, the investigators broke the news to the surviving Shannon sister, who collapsed when her worst fears were realized. She was placed under the care of a physician and could tell officials only that her sister had never mentioned a serious suitor who might have been moved to murderous rage at rejection. But of course, That doesn't rule it out, Police Chief Dennis Callahan told Sheriff Bernard Monte. Sometimes persons who are very close don't talk about love affairs, but if there is no link like that, it is only going to make our job harder. The truth of the dire prediction became more obvious as the hours fled. Though the ground over which Helen Shannon had struggled with her killer was scuffed, it was too dry to preserve distinct footprints. Not a button or shred of cloth had been left at the scene. But the body itself gave the most startling evidence for which they could hope. Dr. Lynn called the investigators together on completion of the autopsy. The killer, he said, was an absolute madman. I found a place on her wrist where he had sunk his teeth, and the marks showed that he had 3 teeth missing in the upper front. Furthermore, the man for whom you are now looking will have fresh scratches on his face or hands. There were bits of skin beneath the victim's fingernails. With every available man on the force at work on the case, police began a wholesale roundup of ex-convicts and known molesters of women in the Ironton area. This soon brought in a youth with a badly scratched face. "Where'd you get those scratches?" "Fight? Let's see your teeth." Surprised, the young man displayed a full set of teeth. But on the chance that the marks on the victim's wrist were somehow inconclusive, he was held to prove his story of a fight. He was not released until a bartender confirmed that the suspect had been in a free-for-all earlier in the previous evening. Tedious canvass door to door. "Go door to door through that whole section," Chief Callahan told his men. "Somebody might have seen or heard something more that will help us." The investigators fanned out on the tedious canvass. Dozens of homes were visited to no avail. But in one, a household told detectives that his front doorbell had been rung about midnight. It was a young man, a stranger, he said. He had been drinking, but he was not incoherent, and he asked me if Curly Fulmer lived here. I told him that Curly lived next door. He thanked me, and that's the last I saw of him. Did you notice his teeth? I can't say that I did. Proceeding next door, the officers found a member of the Fulmer family who said that the same young man had come there looking for Ralph Curly Fulmer. He had been informed that Fulmer was at a civilian conservation corps camp some miles from Ironton and had then gone away. Then this fellow was wandering around the neighborhood drunk at the time of the murder, Callahan said. When told of the discovery, he might have murdered Miss Shannon either before or after asking for Fulmer. We've got to find him, and Fulmer may know who he was. But a telephone call to the camp brought the surprising information that Fulmer himself had vanished. He had been marked absent at bed check time on the night of the murder, had appeared briefly the following day, and then left without telling his plans. Now I want to talk to him more than ever, Callahan said. Get out 3 state flyers. Circulars bearing Fulmer's photograph and description were sent out. A week passed, and then a driver for the CCC camp, which Fulmer had deserted, spotted the wanted man at another camp farther away in Scioto County. He put in a hurried call to officers. Fulmer was in civilian clothes instead of camp work clothes, and I don't know how long he'll hang around there, the driver said. And here's something else you'll be interested in. I watched him and noticed he's got several front teeth missing. Squad cars raced to the Scioto County camp, and a frightened Curly Fulmer was soon in custody. On his neck were long, partially healed scratches. Officers were puzzled by the fact but there had been another man looking for him on the murder night, but they tried a direct attack. "Why did you kill Helen Shannon?" they demanded. Falmer buried his face in his hands, and his shoulders quivered. "I don't remember killing her," he said, "but I remember hitting her, and I guess I must have done it. I was drinking and must have lost my mind." Piecing the puzzle together, officers learned that Falmer had come to Ironton on the murder night and started drinking with a man he met in a tavern. They had exchanged names and addresses, and later in the evening had become separated. It was the fact that this second man had gone looking for his newfound friend which had solved the case. Falmer, approaching home, had seen Miss Shannon and been seized with his insane impulse to kill. After the deed, he had decided not to go home at all, but had returned to the camp to check in the next morning. In February 1936, he was sentenced to life imprisonment for murder. While in jail, his mind broke, and he was removed to a hospital for the criminally insane. So I thought you guys would find that interesting. It was when I first saw it, I had to go through and look because I thought it was a fictitious tale about Ironton, and it mentioned Walnut Street. And I went and I did find Helen Shannon and her sister in the census, and they were living on Front Street, so I'm assuming it was on like the corner of maybe Front and Walnut Street, but it was in the vicinity of Walnut Street. And I found her grave. It's in the Woodland Cemetery. A very sad story, but I liked how Fred Dickinson wrote this. I hope you guys liked it too. Like, share, subscribe, and you heard it here about the Midnight Strangler case at Penny Press. Thanks for watching.